Welcome back to Book Break. I'm here to bring your nightmares to life. I've got a stack of books next to me, all written about some of people's biggest fears. They're not all horror books. I've got a real range of genres in here. We've got some sci-fi, some literary fiction, some humour, some thrillers, and a bit of horror thrown in as well for good measure. But the only thing these books have in common is that they all contain something truly terrifying. So, what is your biggest fear? Perhaps, left over from watching Jurassic Park too many times as a child, your biggest fear might be dinosaurs, in which case, maybe my dress is truly terrifying you right now. But I've got a book recommendation if you're feeling brave enough. The Kaiju Preservation Society by John Scalzi is a sci-fi novel about someone called Jamie who is called upon to do this last-minute job at an animal rights organisation. But the surprise is that this organisation is in an alternate dimension, and that these animals are massive dinosaur-like creatures who roam a planet all of their own. A film that I found even more traumatising than Jurassic Park when I was growing up was Jaws, and that has left me with a lifelong fear of going in the water. But Jaws was actually based on this book by Peter Benchley. The book, just like the film, is about the hunt for this massive great white shark that is terrorising the waters. It has given me a fear of swimming that I will never recover from. If your biggest fear is vampires, then see if you're brave enough to read Fledgling by Octavia E. Butler, which is about a 53-year-old vampire trapped in the body of a young girl. And the relationship between vampires and humans in this book is really different from anything else I've read. So instead of hunting humans for their blood, the vampires here form relationships with humans who will give them their blood in exchange for protection and longer lives, and there's something extra creepy about that. If your biggest fear is rats, this one will terrify you. This is an actual horror novel, The Rats by James Herbert, which is about a swarm of deadly rats taking over a city. It is gruesome and horrifying. It is also a classic and a multi-million copy bestseller, so horror fans, this really is one that you need to have read. A new fear that a lot of us may not have realised until the last 2 years that we had is pandemics, and there are loads of really good books about pandemics, including Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which takes place between two timelines. One in the time when a pandemic is sweeping through the nation and it is absolutely deadly, killing the majority of the population. The second timeline is 20 years into the future when we follow a small group of survivors who have set up a travelling arts group. And what's the only thing that could be scarier than a pandemic? A pandemic with zombies in it. Severance by Ling Ma is a literary fiction novel that eerily predicted the COVID pandemic, despite being written before, but there are so many similarities. The main difference, however, is that people infected with the illness in this book turn into zombies. However, the way zombies are written in this book is totally different from anything that I've ever heard of before, so this is not what you're probably thinking of when you hear the words zombie novel. If your biggest fear is nuclear war, you should read On the Beach by Neville Shute. So this is set a year after a massive nuclear war that has killed the entire population of the Northern Hemisphere, and we are now following a small group of some of the last survivors on Earth. They are gathered on a beach in Melbourne, waiting for this deadly radiation to reach them. It manages to be funny and sad at the same time as this group just wait for their inevitable fate, but is also gripping as they pick up a faint Morse code signal transmitting from the United States. Perhaps your biggest fear is clowns, in which case you will be horrified by Wonderland by Jennifer Hillier, which is about the gruesome secrets hidden beneath a small town amusement park. In the daytime, the park is charming. In the dark, it is terrifying. From the clown museum with its waxwork figures, to the far too realistic House of Horrors, to the dead body that shows up overnight. One of my biggest fears is spiders, and Children of Time by Adrian Tchaikovsky is a sci-fi book about a planet populated by evolved intelligent spiders. That might be my absolute worst nightmare. In fact, spiders in space, that combines two of my worst nightmares, and this book is about the final group of human survivors after humanity has been completely wiped out. So again, that is a third nightmare. This book sounds terrifying, but it is actually a gripping sci-fi adventure. Or perhaps your biggest fear is something a little bit more realistic, interviews, in which case you should read The Interview by C.M. Ewan, because any interview that you go to after this cannot possibly be as bad as what happens to our main character here. Kate ends up on her own in a building after 5 p.m, everyone else in the office has gone home, and the man interviewing her starts asking increasingly disturbing questions. And then she realizes she has no way out. Compared to this, answering questions about your biggest strengths and weaknesses is a piece of cake. And one more terrifying sounding book to look out for that's coming out later in the year is Leech by Hiron Ennis, which has been described as Wuthering Heights with worms. It is a gothic sci-fi novel about parasites. So many things in there to make my blood run cold, so pre-order that one if you're feeling brave. And if you're in the mood for some more horror, I will link here to a video we made before recommending some of the best horror books, so do click through for more terrifying inspiration. And let me know in the comments below, what are your biggest fears, and I'll see if I can recommend you a book based on those. See you next time.